Welcome to Formula One and Sun.
Emergency edition.
Emergency edition. We're doing a post-qualifying for the Azerbaijan Baku Grand Prix. We haven't done this before, but Oscar, after the excitement we've seen over the last couple of days in both the free practice sessions and what was a very exciting quali. You could argue this quali was more exciting than the race in China. We thought we'd quickly record a session and touch on some of the highlights, because if the race tomorrow is as exciting as we've seen the free practice sessions and quali, we're going to have a lot to talk about. So we'll keep this pretty short and sweet, but just report on what we've seen so far this weekend in Baku. Oscar, what are your thoughts?
Okay, to start off with FP1, which wasn't quite very long session because they cancelled it after George Russell ran over a drain cover, and then the Baku officials, I don't know who, proceeded to check every drain cover on the circuit.
That's right, and apparently there's a couple of hundred of them, so that took them a long time to make sure they were all welded down tight.
Poor Williams, that was 2 repairs they had to do.
Yeah, that's right.
One race weekend.
Yeah, that's right. Unfortunate that it had to be to George Russell's car, and it really did some serious damage. And cancelled FP1. I can't remember the last time we saw a cancelled free practice session.
Yeah, and it was close to the beginning.
Interestingly, you might recall some years ago when Valtteri Bottas was driving for Williams, a manhole cover came off and damaged his Williams at Baku.
I think I do remember that,
Yeah, so
actually.
not the first time it's happened to a Williams in Baku. Probably the team that can least afford that kind of damage, and will, of course, no doubt, jump on the fact that their troubles were compounded in qualifying with our good friend Kubica, Robert Kubica.
Yeah.
I guess a little bit of a look into the future of what Charles Leclerc was going to do, but through the castle section, turned in just a smidge too early in quali, touched on the wall and touched on the inside of the corner, bounced into the far side of the wall there.
Yeah, and Leclerc did something similar. He was going in too high and locked up.
Yeah,
and then
his was a bit more gentle, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, I thought his was actually harder because it locked up and then just slammed into the tyre.
No, they did a replay where they showed the G-forces for both, and I think Kubica's was around 20G and Leclerc was around 12G into that. I think it's because he actually locked up and was probably, took a bit more speed off before hitting the wall, whereas Kubica, I think, because he thought he was going to go through, he turned in already.
And accelerated as well.
Maybe. I hope he didn't. But so free practice. For me, Oscar, what I took away from free practice is that you couldn't take anything away from free practice. It was really hard to get a sense of the order.
The track was evolving the whole time and really rapidly too. So when someone went out, the next time someone went out, it would always be faster. Yeah,
look, we live in Chicago, of course, a windy city, and I understand Baku is also a very windy city. There's a lot of dust on the track. Of course, it's a road circuit, so it's not raced on regularly. Lots of dust around, low grip, not a very high abrasion circuit. Lots of people struggling to get tyre temperature in. The thing that we could take away, I thought, from free practice was that the Ferraris were looking pretty mean and lean.
Yeah.
Charles Leclerc in particular looking really dominant. Mercedes were looking, I don't know, half a second to 3/4 of a second off.
Still not as bad as Red Bull were off them.
No. Well, actually, I think Verstappen popped in a few laps. It didn't look too bad. But
but they still weren't at the pace of the Mercedes.
That's right. And so, it was a bit of a toss-up going into quali what was going to happen, other than it looked like Ferrari were going to dominate. And I guess in the early parts of qualifying, Charles Leclerc looked like he had the pace on everyone.
And Vettel sort of as well.
Not so much. I think Vettel was struggling a little bit early in qualifying. In Q1, Charles Leclerc did a 1:41.4. I think Vettel was on a 1:42. So, he had well over half a second in hand. Lewis wasn't too far behind, though. He was only a couple of tenths behind. And Valtteri was sitting around kind of Seb's pace. So, at that first part of quali, it kind of went, okay, well, Leclerc's going to dominate, and we'll see a tight race between Lewis and Seb and Valtteri, perhaps. But you thought Seb might come back.
Yeah.
But then, of course, Kubica threw it into the wall in Q1, and
that threw off
brought
a
out the
few
red
people's
flags.
lap. Yeah, and that probably threw off a few people's laps.
Yeah, well, the session did resume, but they stopped the session for a good 15, 20 minutes while they had to repair the barrier there.
Yeah. And they said that Ricciardo, who was just finishing his lap, and in the end got P15, it was really close, only came in by a few milliseconds, because when a red flag comes out, you can't finish a lap.
You're right. So that must have been in Q2, right?
No, it was in Q1.
Q1, and he got through to Q2. What
Yeah.
we saw, though, out of Q1 is Nico Hülkenberg. So the Renaults, both of them looking like they were struggling. But Hülkenberg, a good second off Ricciardo's pace. I think Q1, Ricciardo did a 142.4, Hülkenberg a 143.4, a second behind. And he talked about afterwards, quite poetically, I think he said he couldn't get into the rhythm and the flow or something like that of the car, and struggling. And we also lost Grosjean, and we saw a few people clouding walls and running deep. It was a session that was full of risk because, if you were on your fast lap, someone in front of you just ran deep into some of those, turn one, down at the end of turn two, or the castle section. There goes your lap.
Which was another dangerous thing about Ricciardo's lap, because they put him out only once, and that one time he had one chance to do it, and if he messed up at all, he was out of Q1. Yeah,
they seem to be struggling with brakes. But early on, I thought, the Kvyat was looking like he was going to be in some trouble early on, but he did a 142.3 and just squeaked in to Q2. I think K-Mag did a 142.3 as well. But it was, and of course Ricciardo just squeaked in as well. So it was pretty tight there at the back end of Q1. But then we get into Q2.
Before we do that,
sure,
we have not touched on Gasly's penalty.
Yeah. Remind me what happened there.
So he was called into the weighbridge, and you have your name flashing in the pit lane on a sign. Normally it would be a green arrow, but he completely ignored it because
this was
they were
in
doing a practice
or in qualifying.
Practice,
right? Okay.
Practice 3,
right in
but
FP3. Yeah,
he completely ignored it, and his penalty was a little harsh. He had to start from the pit lane for the race now.
Yeah, they did an interesting cross during quality. Christian Horner, who kind of said, hey, he did the crime. No one's saying that he didn't break the rule there. Easy mistake to make, but he did break the rule. But the punishment's really harsh. And I thought Christian Horner said something really good. He kind of said, well, the risk is if they have to go back to a practice session to use that as your qualifying positions in case they have to cancel qualifying, that they could get an advantage because they could be cheating, the car could be underweight. But Christian Horner said, well, the simple thing there is just declassify his times from the practice session so that if that event occurs, it doesn't matter. But really bad for Gasly. And of course, at the end of Q1, who stuck it in P1? It was Gasly, right? With a time that was on fire.
Yeah,
compared to everyone, right?
Slipstream at the end of the lap. Behind Haas, I think.
That's right, and I think we're going to see. I'm just having a look for Gasly's time, a 141.3, which was 0.3 in front of Lewis. And where was Charles Leclerc? 141.4. So it was a 10th in front of Leclerc as well in Q1. So absolutely on fire time. I'm glad he did that. I think that'll give him, he's obviously got that point at the end of China for the fastest lap. He put in that great Q1 time. That'll give him a bit of confidence, but he's going to have a tough race. But look, we're going to see him carving up through the field, starting from pit lane. And then, of course, tragedy hit in the second part of qualifying with our good friend Charles Leclerc.
And he ran straight into a wall.
He did a Kubica, right? Well, not the same thing. As you said earlier, he locked the brake.
He didn't touch the wall at any chance. He just locked the brake.
Yeah. And, look, you got to feel for Charles. And no one beats him up more than he beats himself up. He sat there saying, I'm stupid. What a mistake. And, look, he was, you would have thought, a lock for pole position today had he not done that. But you can feel sorry for him, but it was a mistake, and that's what sorts out the wheat from the chaff a little bit here at Baku. Easy mistake to make. I'm not saying I'm not casting shade on him, but you've got to get through, right?
If you're listening to this, and I'm assuming you don't drive an F1, 2, or 3, or any other thing at Baku.
I know, I'm sure all the
you would
all
have
the great
easily
drivers
made
listen to
that
our
mistake.
podcast. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, Charles, of course, you're listening to our podcast because we know you do. And look, the tough luck, mate. It was a little mistake that cost you dearly. And but what I'm looking forward to is I'm not quite sure where he's going to start on the grid. Will it be in P10? Because he couldn't participate in Q3.
P10.
Yeah, because he made it through to Q3, of course, because he was in P5, I think, at the end of Q2.
Yeah.
So presumably then, he'll start in P10. Don't know if there's going to be any other penalties further up the grid. But then we saw some pretty exciting stuff in Q3. So Charles Leclerc out. So you think, okay, well, the Ferraris have looked fast. Seb's going to get pole position, but not to be.
Yeah.
Who did we see rearing his robot head again?
Valtteri Bottas.
Bottas 2.0, as they like to call him. It was great to see. And actually, we shouldn't be too surprised. He was keeping Lewis honest all weekend. Q1, he was a fair bit slower.
Yeah, he seemed slower.
He was faster in Q2
he was
by
fast,
about 800ths.
He was fast, but not that much faster and mostly slower.
And he ended up pipping Lewis by, about a half a tenth, I think, in Q3.
I was genuinely surprised when he did that.
Yeah, no, we were high-fiving. Lewis is obviously a great talent, but it's great to see Valtteri at the beginning on pole position. I think that's going to be super exciting. We're going to see Charles Leclerc cutting through the field. We're going to see Gasly, if he can maintain that form, cutting through the field. Checo Perez, the man with the most podiums ever in Baku, qualified in P5. The guy loves Baku, what can we say? And right behind him, Denny Kvyat, Max Verstappen on the second row with Seb.
Vettel, yeah.
Yeah, and Max has looked pretty strong. The disappointment to me is I wanted to see the Ferraris up the front just because I think the Mercedes are probably pretty equal on race pace, whereas the Ferraris look to have that better one-lap pace, but didn't show it, or at least Seb didn't show it in quali.
Something else I wanted to touch on is we mentioned last episode that Giovinazzi didn't get much attention. Well, this qualifying, he out-qualified Raikkonen by 6/10.
And his first ever Q3 appearance, we should call that out. Great effort by both the Alphas. Kimi's being, Mr. Consistent up there in kind of P8, P9. I think just about every Q3 session except last race in China. I don't think he did he? Yeah. But he's been a regular Q3 appearance. But Giovinazzi, great to see him out-qualify. And kind of fairly convincingly in Q3 at least. I think Kimi never got a solid run in by about 6/10 on Kimi in Q3.
And Giovinazzi doesn't have any points yet, so it'd be good to see him get some points this race.
Yeah, and look, my the other person that I'm excited to see up there, of course, is Lando Norris. I think McLaren's kind of came from nowhere. I don't think they were showing much pace throughout the weekend up until kind of the later parts of qualifying. So Sainz, I think, just missed out on Q3. A bit of bad luck. I can't recall. But probably could have been a bit of bad luck with the safety car, or not a safety car, a yellow flag or something like that as well. Oscar, a mixed up grid. What an exciting day. I think
it'll be interesting to see,
Yeah, I think the race is going to be, and if it's full of the drama that we've seen so far this weekend, really, anyone could win. Anyone.
Full of the drama last race weekend too. And since Ricciardo has finished and not finished the same races as he did last year, he didn't finish Baku last year.
Don't give him the curse. Yeah, does that mean we're going to see him in the back of Verstappen or something like that?
Hopefully not back of Hülkenberg.
Yeah, well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. A super interesting qualifying at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Some interesting free practice sessions as well. And we're all set for what should turn out to be a pretty exciting race tomorrow, Oscar.
Yeah, look forward to that episode, which should come sometime in the next week. If
hopefully
we're well organised.
Yeah, I think we'll get our race review out a little bit earlier so that you can listen to our thoughts on the 2019 Baku Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And that's it for Formula One and Sun, this qualifying session review. We'll talk to you next time.